Okay, so thank you. Like now my Zoom has Siri. This is a new function. I don't even know what that's all about, but okay, here we go. Connections to trauma and the physical body. I don't even know what I called this class. I think it started out, one of you precious people in 21 and 21 asked, what's the connection between physical trauma and spiritual and emotional trauma? It was such a brilliant question, and I'm so very grateful that this woman asked. And as I studied and talked about it in my own essential oil group, my usage group, what I realized is this is actually a foreign topic, even though we know about it, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't understand how something so well known can be so hands-off and so foreign, right? So, yeah, it's interesting. So I love it. So I may jump around a touch. Please do try to keep up. Like I said, if you have any questions and you're on live, ask in the chat. If you need some clarification and you're watching the replay, no worries. You all know where to find me. So the first thing we need to address, we're going to go back. We're going to do some elementary deep dive where we're going to just talk about what happens in the body with trauma, what is trauma, and all of this. And some of you might feel like, okay, I know that, that's a little basic. That's okay. Take notes anyway. Because I don't know if you realize this, but the human mind has to hear something 12 times in order for it to stick. I'm going to say that again so that you can give yourself a whole lot of grace. You have to hear something 12 times in order for it to actually stick. Okay? So the first thing is, Rose, right? I mean, sisters, right? To begin with, what is trauma? Here's the thing. I'm just going to say this as briefly, but as blunt as I can. You don't get to decide. I don't get to decide, and you don't get to decide what trauma is. So there, that's that. So go ahead. You can Google what is trauma, and the Google doesn't get to decide. Your practitioner doesn't get to decide. Your doctor doesn't get to decide. Your shrink doesn't get to decide. Guess who decides? I wish we were live. I do a giveaway here. This is one of those moments where I'm like, Zoom. I need to do a giveaway because here's one of you guys would get some goodie from me. But the thing that gets to decide what trauma is this, your body. Okay, so you should write that down. Your body gets to decide what is trauma. I'll say it again. Not you, not your mom, not your grandma, not your dad, not your brother, not your uncle, not your distant relative, not your BFF, not all of Facebook, not all of social media, not the president, not the king, not the queen, nobody but your body. Okay? So we're all super clear. And I say that because we qualify trauma near constantly. I'll give an example. When I had, when my son had cancer, right? He was 9. Don't do this, by the way, if this is you. But my neighbor came over and was like weeping all over the place because my son had cancer. That was weird. And then she would say, oh, well, my life, like she would complain about something and then say, oh, it's not that bad because after all, my people don't have cancer. And it was just it was a very weird discussion. I'll just qualify that. And that would happen to me because I was a hairdresser out of my house while all of this was going on. And people would just naturally tend to be a little bit on the negative side. So they would be prone to complaining to me. And they would catch themselves with scissors in my hand, like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, at least I'm not going through what you're going through. Which, number one, way to make a friend feel really crappy, number one. Number two, your stuff is your stuff, my stuff is my stuff. Like, we don't get to qualify it. Because like Rose right now could be going through something that's really hard for her. And for me, the hardest thing that's happened to me this week is there was a dead rat outside my window. I can assure you that is traumatic. And I'm still like, I look like this. I have this beautiful view of a lake, but then there's this dead rat. That's traumatic. So if I haven't beat that horse dead enough, let's just say it one more time. We don't get to decide. No person gets to decide what trauma is. Your body gets to decide. That's just fact. I think there was even a book somebody posted about it, The Body Keeps Score or something like that. I've never read it because I'm like, I know this. Like, I don't need to dive into something I already know, right? But maybe some of you guys do. So here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and Jen Weir paraphrase probably what that whole book says. And we need to understand what happens in the body, what occurs in your person at a cellular level when trauma happens. Now, remember, we all agreed, we didn't do a pinky swear handshake on it, but let's just all agree that we don't get to decide what trauma is. But what we do need to do is understand what it is. I mean, not what it is, but what your body does with it, right? So if your body now realizes, ooh, that was traumatic. Okay, now what happens? Well, what happens is when there's an experience for you, and I'll just say it's a traumatic event, because again, the dead rat, super traumatic to me, right? But some of you farm girls, like, what? It's just nature. I'm like, okay, but again, we're not qualifying it, are we? Everybody's experience is different. So when someone experiences a traumatic event, adrenaline rushes into the body. Earlier when I said we all know this is so basic. If I did my little test, which I love doing when I speak live to people, is, okay, everybody close your eyes and pretend you're about to jump out of an airplane. Like, we go through a little bit longer than that, and immediately I can tell who is itching to go skydiving and who is like, oh no, I'd rather die 1,000 deaths than do that. Like, I can just tell by their faces. And what happens is just the thought of it is triggering that adrenaline, right? Just the thought of it. And adrenaline, so funny, PPS, this is free, right? Trauma and excitement actually produce the same hormones in the body. Adrenaline, endorphins, all of these stressors in the body, cortisol. Now, it's what we do with it and how we mentally respond that gets a little bit unravelly. So hang with me. So when somebody experiences a traumatic event, adrenaline rushes to the entire body. The memory of that, so here's where we start to differentiate between trauma versus excitement versus something like so thrilling, birth of a baby, that kind of thing, is that the memory is imprinted in the amygdala, which is part of our limbic system. So if you haven't done a deep dive into emotional health or your emotion brain, what I need you to do right now is write down the word amygdala. One of my sweet people who have just delved into this at length, if you wouldn't mind just typing that out in the chat. And the limbic system, write down those two things. And you go on and do a little study on your own about what these are in the body. If you use essential oils, which I suspect every single one of you does, these words should be at least familiar to you. Now, what I find interesting, thank you, Rose, I find this interesting is when I first began teaching this, I had a nurse, right? She'd gone to school, has the letters, all the things, and said, there's no limbic system. We didn't learn that in not medical school, but nursing school. And I thought, was I wrong? Because I mean, that's the thing. Like, I can get wrong and I can read stuff, so I had to go back and actually know. So what that told me is just what I suspected, that they actually don't teach you the human body in medical school all the time. Sometimes they do, but my experience is this. I had a kid with a rare cancer, and so of course they had a rare cancer pediatric specialist headed up, and when I looked at this guy face to face, he'd been in schools almost as long as I've been alive, I think, and said, let's talk nutrition, he didn't know what to tell me. He's like, fruits and veggies can't hurt. That's funny, because I went home and really researched. In 48 hours, I came up with how fruits and veggies and essential oils and all that can actually do a lot of damage to cancer. So I don't know what to tell you about that. When the amygdala holds all of these memories that are not dealt with, it can also hold the emotional significance of it. This is our emotion brain. The limbic system is part of, the limbic system is the emotional part of the brain. The amygdala plays a really big part of this. I'm going to do my level best to not deep dive into every nuance and every cell in the body, but this is just, I'm such a nerd, you guys. This is like, I just get so giddy to teach this, so please forgive me. I'm just going to move along. When you have an event happen and it's held in the amygdala, it's imprinted into your body. And not only that, but it holds the intensity of the event. So in other words, the very place where our emotions come from hold this experience. Okay? Including the magnitude of the feeling. Including the magnitude of the feeling. Which is why I crack up. Like, I don't know how many of us, I'm so curious to know how many of us on here have been skydiving. It doesn't matter. My guess is probably more of us have not than have. And yet if I give you that example, because of the other people's stories, we now emotionalize with it. We now take it as our own, and we can create a physical response in the body. We do this if somebody is really sad. We'll well up with tears. It's not even our issue. Hence my neighbor crying over my own child having cancer. It's kind of weird, but that's how we do it. It's because we can imagine it's us. We hook those on to our own traumatic issues, our own traumatic events. And I see little people on this call right now, and here's what here's what it is that your little people have already experienced trauma in their life because growing up is traumatic. And again, you don't get to qualify what they deal with as trauma. I coached a woman who couldn't grow her Young Living business, and she'd been through all these different coaching things, and I was like the last pit stop, right? You try everything, okay, maybe we'll just try Jen Weir. And turns out she had this weird thought that she's not allowed to have anything good, any success past a certain point, because she always had to share with her little sister. What? This was years and years ago that I talked to this woman, and it made me realize my whole coaching changed from then on. Because I started asking deeper questions. Tell me about your family of origin. Tell me about who you have in your family, right? And so it really matters. It matters. So when our emotions hold the experience, including the magnitude, now we start to go, okay, so we're seeing a little bit of emotion, a little bit of physical, right? We're seeing how these two are connected. Again, this is not anything that you guys have never heard. But going to, Rose's comment 1,200 times, right? It should be 12, maybe it's 100 times more than that for us. But here's the thing. This is where triggers come from, also known as frustrations. The triggers that we have in society, in our lives, in our world, all stem from our traumatic experiences. And I'm going to pause right here, and I'm just going to rip off the Band-Aid because it's my favorite thing to do. I like to talk about the things nobody will touch, right? Okay, here we go. We just took a whole world of people, about, I'm going to go with 7 billion. There's almost 8 billion. So I'm going to give like 1 billion of us that like the grace to say there's maybe 1 billion emotionally healthy, strong people on the planet. Yeah? Okay, that's being super generous, but I'm going to say that. So you take all those people, the other 7 billion, who are not very emotionally stable. They just kind of just keeping it under wraps. Best that they can, they're just surviving. And then you throw COVID on there. Oh, dang. What just happened? What just happened is you just now took an entire world and took them with trauma. Oh, and it's also a pandemic, right? So your body, I don't care what you believe about it, by the way. We're just leaving all of that out. So don't get mad. None of that. Just save your digital ink, right? Here's the thing. That was an illness. And if you are being triggered because this messes with you on either side of the equation, and you were not in an emotionally healthy state to begin with, now you have just skyrocketed yourself into a spiral. And I venture to guess that some people are having physical malfunctions all because of last year. I mean, I'm not a psychic, but you know, I'm just going to say, I've seen what I've seen and I know what I know. So these triggers are, in case you're curious, okay, what exactly is a trigger? Because we sort of throw that word around, right? Like, oh, I was just going to trigger one. I'm not going to say it. But anyway, we throw this word around. Let's just say that. And the thing is that a trigger is, all it is an emotional response. Well, yeah, it's an emotional response to something that doesn't warrant that kind of an emotion. So we all understand reasonable emotional responses. For example, when I lived in Massachusetts for a long time, and you guys, most of you know, and so we were on, it was pretty much the heavy hitting with the restrictions and the mandates and all of this. And had sexual abuse was part of my upbringing. That was, so anything over my face is just a little bit triggering for me. Just a little, scoshy, right? So I had a full-blown come apart every time I had to go to the market. Once they said, all of Massachusetts, you guys have to wear a mask, I was about to, like, I would have a panic attack. I'd feel like I was going to throw up. Like, it was really triggering for me. That in itself is not an unreasonable emotional response. It's just not. What was unreasonable is losing my Schmidt on this precious Trader Joe's worker one day, to which the Lord himself made me go back and apologize to this guy the next week. Like, just, I mean, if you don't want to eat your words, just keep it under wraps, right? But he asked something about, it was, this is so embarrassing, but I think I shared with you guys in 21 and 21, let's just like call it just don't follow Jen Weir's example of things to do in your life would probably be really good. But we had to stand on these lines, and that just drove me absolutely bananas. And at Trader Joe's, it doesn't even matter, but we had to stand on these lines, and I was already like, I'd already called my husband and having a panic attack, and I was just trying to get my $50,000 worth of groceries because I had 9 people living in my house, and he's like, "Ma'am, I need you to stand on this line." I'm like, "I need you to stop doing this!" And I was like, "Oh dear God, this is how it ends. I'm about to get arrested from screaming at the guy at Trader Joe's." So, like, my full arm stomping is totally unreasonable. It's a trigger. Being upset about having to wear a mask for me because of my past was not unreasonable. But the way that it came out, are you guys tracking with me? The way that it came out was totally unacceptable. The reason why it was totally unacceptable, because it wasn't the Trader Joe's employee, it wasn't his fault. He was doing his job. You see how that works? I hope I'm preaching to somebody today. I hope the next time somebody asks you to do something that you don't want to do, and you have your "it's my right to not do this" card, that you very sweetly and graciously remember it's not that person. They're just doing their job. I hope you guys are hearing me on that one. So a trigger is something that we respond to in a way that's really not matching the situation at hand. Okay? But again, we're connecting the dots between trauma experiences, traumatic events, and the physical body and the emotional body. Physical responses, by the way, to trauma, in case you're wondering, like, all right, I don't know, do I have any kind of trauma? Exhaustion, confusion, anxiety, feeling just sort of numb. The thing is, I don't know how many of you know this about me, but I'm a people watcher. I studied humans for 100 years when I cut hair, right? And so I love now, because I'm online most of the time, especially living in the country, it doesn't really lend itself to bebopping around town anymore. But I watch. And so when I see people post about brain fog, gut health, I'm like, oh, you have trauma. Okay, you can use your clarity oil and slap a Band-Aid on it, or we could do a little deep dive into your emotions. This is straight from WebMD. Physical responses include exhaustion, confusion. I didn't even touch the insomnia that people have. I stopped getting these side messages, Jen, what's a good oil for insomnia? Because I'd always respond with, well, what's going on in your life? And before you know it, they're like with the big cry emoji, like, ah, I'm sorry you asked. I know you just want to sleep, but it's not my gig. You got to go ask Pamela. I said, well, no, Pamela probably asked you the same thing. I have to ask the questions because I'm not just going to slap a Band-Aid on. It's not what I do. I hope that you guys don't either. So here's the thing. When a traumatic event occurs, here's the other just mind-boggling. The body is so incredibly designed. So I got to read my notes here. Our internal organs suffer, they often suffer damage. Not always, they often suffer damage after a traumatic event because, especially after traumatic injury. So kind of put that in your mind. So traumatic injury, I would say probably for sure, but a traumatic event, often, okay? So after a traumatic event or injury, because the body redirects the blood to save the brain and the heart. So think about it. If you have a traumatic event, maybe it's just not just, that's a word I need to get. Maybe it is an event that was more emotional in nature, okay? Your body is a physical being, obviously. And immediately, your body is having a chemical response to send the blood to where it needs to go, the brain and the heart, okay? These are our vital organs. This is what keeps us alive. What happens then, depending on how long it takes, especially if it's a traumatic injury, depending on how long it takes for that to heal, and depending on how long it takes for you to appropriately deal with the emotions, will depend on how long the rest of the organs have less blood. Not no blood, because that's obviously not a thing, but less blood. You guys didn't know you were going to science class tonight, did you? Mohaha. I love it. This is why I'm homeschooled for, what am I on? My 12th year, 13th year? I lost count. But here's the thing. This robs our intestines and our lungs, especially our stomach. Remember I mentioned gut health? It robs them of oxygen and other vital substances. So now I hope you guys are beginning to see there's a physical connection with the emotional. There's an emotional connection with the physical. This kind of gets to the question, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I used to say most diseases are emotion-based. I didn't always deal in as much absolutes as I do now. Now I would tell you, I'd say 100% of conditions in the body, 100%. I've talked to way too many people who've had really obscure things, and I don't have the time. Well, I have all the time in the world, but maybe you guys don't want to invest the time. If you said, well, Jen, what about this? Yeah, I can tell you what emotion. Yeah, what about, like, it just is. I'll give you an example. Just simply tripping and maybe twisting your ankle or breaking something. Bitterness rots the bones, my friend. It's scripture right there. That's better than the Google. So if you've got brittle bones and they're prone to breaking because you have let a root of bitterness grow up and you haven't dealt with it, you might break something if you trip and fall. There's that. Okay. So a couple things that I want to share with you because I think this is really important. And you've seen me post on my regular main page. And then if you're in our oily group, then you've seen me talk a little bit more about this. There's so much information to unpack with this little bit of topic that I'm going to insert here that I am praying I do it justice, and maybe we'll just do a kidney talk later, which, can you imagine? I'm like, oh, it'd be my dream to talk about the kidneys for a whole hour, but there it is. So the thing is that, well, let me just explain to you how this all came up, because I think that's important, because that way you know I actually have some street cred here, and I'm not just like, hey, this might be a thing. About a year ago, my children and I did a Hebrew word study, because all nerdy homeschool families do Hebrew word studies, right? We did a Hebrew word study on the heart and the mind. And my intention was, I'm nearly constantly working to get my children to speak life. Speak life, speak life. And I wanted them to see in the scriptures how our mouth and our mind and our heart, it's all connected, right? So as we did this study, we realized that there were two words so closely together that meant the heart and the mind. Well, one of us, I don't know if it was me or one of my children, realized that one of the words, when it meant the organ, was actually talking about the kidneys. And we're all like, what is with the kidneys? So it talks about your mind. But then if it's not talking about your will, your discernment, your affections, right, that type of thing, then it's talking about an organ. And they're talking about your kidneys back here, your actual kidneys. Not this, not the ticker. It's talking about this. So for a while, I just thought, okay, what is the spiritual significance? I don't know who to ask. And, how am I going to research it? Just through much prayer, right? And I learned from the best. Gary Young prayed, because there was no research material when he started giving us our oils. You all know that, right? And he just prayed. And Job says, speak to the plants and they will speak to you. Gary said, hey, your word says, speak to the plants and they will teach you. So you can just think, just in case you didn't know, that's just how he prayed, came up with all this stuff. Okay, same. So what we realize is that the Hebrews, and the next time any of us get so arrogant, we think, oh, we're so advanced technology-wise. Yeah, okay, we have this smartphone, this $1 million computer in our back pocket, but we know zip about this. But the Hebrews did. The Egyptians did. They also had indoor plumbing, but that's another story for another day. So the Hebrews knew a thing or two about this. We would be wise to go back and study. What did the ancients know? What did they teach? You see, in the books of the Bible that follow the Pentateuch, right, the first 5 books are the Torah, mostly in Jeremiah and in the Psalms, the human kidneys are cited figuratively, number 1, as a site of temperate emotions, prudence, vigor, and wisdom. In the same vein as that, in 5 instances, they're mentioned as the organs examined by God to judge an individual. Now, when I talk about the spiritual connection with the physical, now that I've learned this, and now that I have studied more and more about the kidneys, I realize much of our physical conditions, a sore back, I posted about that in my stories if you want to see, has to do, and I even mentioned it over the weekend, with your psoas, right? It all begins with your kidneys. So your kidneys mess with the psoas, which messes with the back, and you throw trauma on there, unresolved. Well, now you're going to have some shoulder pain, but you might go to the chiropractor, you might use your Valor in there constantly, right? And be like, oh, I just can't get this kink out. Or you're rolling it out with a foam roller, or you got your tennis ball or something, or it's like, oh, I'm putting stress away on my neck. When maybe what you should do is actually take care of your kidneys. Put some juniper and joy over those. Speak life and blessing over your kidneys. Tap into that. Get to the root. Oh, the 5 things, I'm glad you asked Maureen to clarify. So it's temperament, emotions, prudence, vigor, and wisdom. Obviously, I talk about God a lot. obviously. I think I've even lost friends over it. Like I remember a long time ago, they wouldn't watch my essential oil videos because their husband kept complaining, she can talk about God all the time. I'm like, sorry. It's how I have my breath. So I would be remiss to be like, there's this floaty guy that I don't mention. But here's what I realized from those experiences, is that there's so many people who are really angry at God and refuse to believe, refuse to acknowledge, all because of trauma. A couple of things. So again, this goes back to what came first, the chicken or the egg. Triggers are rooted in experience, not truth. I'll say that again because that's pretty cool. Triggers are rooted in our experience, but not truth. Not truth. Our God gets blamed for so much wrong that happens. I can prove it to you. Watch. My family, they're on a big tea kick. My apologies. Insurance companies. Did you guys know, I just learned this. Did you know that they have acts of God as part of your policy? What? Why, if my car gets damaged by hail, is it called an act of God? My God wouldn't damage my car. That's either me being lazy, not clearing at the garage, or telling my children to get your Lego table out so I can park my car. Number one. That's the basic, yeah? But the truth of it is, there's an enemy of my soul. There's an enemy of your soul, literally trying to steal, kill, and destroy everything that you have and all that you touch. And so, don't you know that he will try to hurl hailstones at my car? But see, this isn't a Bible study. This isn't how to take your authority as a believer in Jesus. So we're not going to talk about that right now because that's a thing. That's the thing. I'll just say this. I'll leave it at this. And if any of you needs to know just some details, I'm super happy to dive in. But last weekend, I had a worship night at my house. Last weekend, it was pouring rain. We were supposed to meet outside. It was pouring. The worship leader called. She's like, we're really concerned. They live like 30 minutes away. We're really concerned. I can't see. I'm driving 30 miles an hour. Legit, you guys, it was sunny over my house. Here's why it was sunny. Because an hour before, I was like, hey, I rebuke you, storm, in the name of Jesus. You need to go. You need to pass over this house. Bye-bye. It was sunny. It was sunny. And if you live in North Texas or all over Texas, you'd be like, wow, we should have gone to Jen Weir's house last weekend. That's how that works. Our God gets blamed for so much that is wrong in this world. And he's like, free will. Have y'all heard of it? It's no wonder that there's a need to heal spiritually. It's no wonder that someone thinks that God did this, whatever the this is, that they might have major triggers. It's no wonder. Here's the thing. If someone was hurt by a rep for God, right? Be it a pastor, a priest, someone who works at a church, or someone who's like, oh, I'm a Christian, but they're a complete tool to you, then physical conditions, I should say, there may be weakness occurring in the body, and then a physical condition can result from that. So, for example, some emotions that stem from hurt, right? And we think it's God, but it's actually a person. Abandonment. Where was God when all this was going on? Where were you, God? People might feel punished by him, like they did something wrong. Many people have a loss of meaning or purpose in their life. It was interesting. See, I told you guys, this could go on. Today I was at Costco, and the man, like, doing my boxes, he was singing. And he saw my shirt, Hippie Mama, and he starts singing a little tune with Hippie Mama. I'm like, oh, you're a singer. He's like, no, I just like to sing. I was like, wait, what? What's the difference? And, you know, he had to give me his speech about, well, you know, there's people, he's like in football, there's someone who's an actual football player and then someone who likes to play football. I'm like, oh, you mean you don't get paid to sing? Is that it? But you're a singer because God gifted you. So you're a singer. I'm going to call that out in you. And he said, and he was just kind of taken aback. I said, look, I just spent 2.5 years in Massachusetts with 2 incredibly talented musicians. And they didn't think that they were singers either. They just like to rap and do this music on the side. And the thing is, until I looked them in the eye, I said, you are gifted by God, whether you like it or not. You do not belong at a union job doing construction work or work in some cash checking place at 2:00 in the morning. You belong behind a microphone portraying or proclaiming that gift that he gave you. When they decided to do that, they had someone fund all of their music and they were able to drop an album last May. My point is, when somebody is hurt by God, they don't have a purpose. They don't always see the gifts and talents that he gave. Consequently, they're now stuck at Costco working a job just to make good money. Spiritual hurts, spiritual wounds affect every aspect of our life, emotional and physical. That's how those things are connected. And the thing is that if any of you have Carolyn Main, yes, her book, right? In our Essentially Free class, we deep dive into this a lot. She's got 6 emotions that stem from the kidneys, right? And if we think about how the Hebrews and the Egyptians all knew that your kidneys were, you know, had a lot to do with our emotions. As I read these, this should make sense. Powerless. That's the first one listed. When we are devoid of a relationship with God, humans, like it or not, have an innate need to know and understand that there is something greater than themselves. Otherwise, what's the point? If we're all there is, wow. That's a little scary, right? One like quick glance back at 2020, you're like, oh, dang, if that's as high as we go, whew, that gene pool better fix itself. Powerless. The next one would be like having a bad feeling, just everything is bad. A suppression. Persecuted is the 4th thing. The last one is a fear of love. And I could just say fear. And this is the last portion of where we'll wrap it up. But I'm really asking you guys to give careful attention to what I'm saying right now. There are only 2 emotions in the entire world that everything else stems from. Just like in frequency, right? Actually, yeah, you have positive and negative. Just 2. In emotions, we have fear and we have love. Just 2. So these first few emotions I read to you, powerless, bad feeling, suppression, persecution, and every other emotion that Dr. Main lists, it's either fear or it's love. Now, when you understand that we all have a need to know and understand who our creator is, that we have to believe there has to be something bigger than me, something divine, and I'm not talking about the universe. The universe does not care 1 iota about you. It's just trying to survive and be all big and expansive, right? Our universe is amazing. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, trying to show off. bigger than that, the one who created that. When you understand that, and you understand, and you have a very keen awareness that he is only love. Only love. The Old Testament, I'm just going to say this, God wasn't having a bad day for like 4,000 years. If you read it through the eyes of a God who loves his people and is like, come on, I'm just desperate to get you to be my people. Now the game has changed. And if you've been a parent, and your kids might say, oh, mom is just having the worst day. No, mom just loves you so much. She doesn't want to have you acting like a fool and doing this. It's love. Okay, so there's that. Now, here's the thing. Love. Well, if the opposite is fear, I don't even need to discuss where that comes from. As mentioned earlier, there is an enemy of your soul who is trying to instill fear in you in every single turn. The scriptures say he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus came so that we can have life, and have it not only life, but like abundant life in every aspect of that word. So if you are having a negative emotion, understand the root of it is fear. So we began this time, someone asked, what is the connection between physical conditions and emotional and spiritual? Well, here we have fear and love. And there needs to be a clear distinction, because I mentioned here with the kidneys that there's fear of love or fear to be loved. That is just another emotion, or I don't even know how you say that. Maybe one of you guys would know, but like a phrase of it, right? So there's one emotion is fear, the other emotion is love, just like positive, negative. But I mentioned the fear of love or fearing to be loved is under the umbrella of fear. I hope that makes sense. I know it'll make sense for you all. And so when you have any kind of physical condition, right? Because I see it, we talk about it. Know that there is an emotional component 100% of the time, and there quite possibly is a spiritual component. Even people who know the God that I know, I will have to go on a limb and say, especially the people who know the God that I know. Because when you don't know God, you're just like looking for stuff, and maybe you don't notice how what you read in the scriptures is not lining up with how your body is doing. That's, I'm realizing, okay, that's going to be a little too much, but maybe that's another story for another day, right, guys? Okay, so there's that. Now what? I wrote out all this fabulous information. I have my yellow, like I kicked it old school. I mean, I'm not even joking. Usually I put this on my computer, and this is too good to write on my computer. Now what? You come to this class, I tell you this information, I'm like, have fun with your kidneys, see ya, have a good evening. I got to give you a now what, of course, how to heal. But I'm going to be straight up honest with you, because I'm pretty sure even if this is your first time, me and you talking, having an interaction, you can tell I have an edge to me. I don't pull any punches. I don't have time. I don't have time. I met kids in Massachusetts, and some of them had friends who I met that died pretty closely after that. I don't have time to mess around. I got to tell you what I got to tell you, and you do with it what you want. So here's what I'm going to tell you. The no punches, I'm not pulling any. You asked, well, maybe you all didn't ask. One person asked, but you're all here. There's 96 people who said they were coming to this class. 96 people are interested in this information. So obviously there's something. You're not going, hey, I'm kind of bored on a Monday night. Let me see about this trauma. Let's talk about that, because that's Netflix has probably got way more lighthearted information. Okay? So simply put, don't blow it off. Don't wait another moment to not just deal with it. Gosh, I need it. Rose, I need you to help me come up with a better word than deal with it. You're so good with the words. Acknowledge it, process it, walk through it, heal from it. Everyone, we live in an instant culture. 9 years ago, my family went vegan because my husband's body was having a full-blown physical come apart. Okay? I choose to know. Thank you, Pamela. That was good. That's a good word. When we said we were going to do this, just sort of being funny on social media, the backlash that we got was astounding to me. And now, fast forward 9 years, I see all manner of people posting about like, oh, look at my plant-based salad. Look at my plant-based lunch. Yada. I'm like, wow, so it got that bad, huh? It got that bad with your body that now you're ready to address it. Does that make sense? It was like these same people were saying, I could never do that. That's so hard. I need my meat. Well, guess what? Now your body's having a complete come apart, as my husband's body did. You don't have to wait another 9 years. I'm telling you now, address it. Choose to know, as Sarah and Pamela, these girls have been with me for so long. They're invaluable, by the way, these ladies. Don't waste your years putting it off. Don't waste these last 50 minutes that we've been together. Address it. I'm going to be 48 this Friday, and my favorite color is blue, and I love bulldogs, in case anyone wants to send me a gift. But I'm going to be 48 this week. And I didn't start addressing any emotional issues until I was, I'll have to do the math, like 41, 42. It got so bad that I couldn't stop Googling weird symptoms. Thank you, Vicki. It got so bad that I was freaking out about shoes that my children would leave. I'd yell at my kids for no good reason. I was a terrible mom then. But I gotta say, it took me 41 years to get that way. There was no way I could just use Trauma Life, which is what my upline and all my sweet friends told me to use, is Trauma Life. That wasn't the ticket. That was the entryway. That was like, oh my gosh, these oils aren't like BS. These actually do something. I don't know what they do, but okay, we're all right. So the first thing I would tell you is understand that however old you are, and if you've never dealt with any kind of trauma, or I'll just say this, emotional unease, it took you this long to realize that there was a need for something. Know that it's not going to happen overnight. Your little vegan salad, it's not going to lower your blood pressure or your blood sugar with just one meal. I got news for you. It's got to be a lifestyle. It just does. It's just how life is. The second thing that you want to do is you want to have your oily arsenal. I'm a fixer. My number one strength in Strength Finders is activator. I'm sure none of you are surprised by that. You tell me you got a situation, I'm like, I got you. We need peace and calming. We're gonna need some sacred mountain and throw in some loyalty for good measure. Okay, good. You're all set? Everybody good? It doesn't work that way. That's what works for me. I used to say, even up until really recently, Gary Young, and I'm not saying, please hear me, I'm not saying this isn't truth, but this is what I said, and I'm going to add an addendum to it. Gary Young and the team and whoever came up with the starter kits. Beautiful. It's what we need. Then we have the ancient oils. So I would say, okay, you just need your starter kit. Okay, well, actually, you need your starter kit and the ancient oils kit. Okay, actually, you need the ancient oils kit, the starter kit, and you need the feelings kit. Oh, dang, now we have the freedom bundle. Yeah, okay, you guessed it, you need that too. I'm not joking. I wish I were. My checkbook wishes I were. I gotta be honest. I gotta be straight up honest with you. Because here's the thing, each oil in its own right was synergistically put together to help discomfort and dis-ease at various times. There are times when trauma life is just enough for me, but there are times when I gotta go with good old cat pee valerian, and I just gotta douse myself in that. I'm like, sorry everybody, I can go sleep outside if you need, but does mama need some valerian? And that's that. But I also want to say, if all you have right now is the starter kit in your possession, then that is an excellent place to start. But here's the thing, everyone. Okay, let's say this. In 2015, if you've been doing oils that long, we were told we couldn't say anything. And I heard every time I post something, every time I was in a class, oh, this is compliant. Like I'm saying in my whiny voice, right? Like, make sure you keep it compliant, make sure. And it just like, it got to the point where I was like, just stop telling me what to do, number one. And then remember the line, like where they would tell me where to stand. I had to put this thing over my face. I'm like, okay, somebody needs to stop telling me what to do. Okay, FDA, you're first to go. You don't get to tell me what to do. So sorry, my kid got healed from plants and prayer. So sorry about your bad luck, but I'm going to go ahead and just say the things. And the thing of it is this. These heal the cells in the body. They just do. Remember that thing I said about praying? If you guys are concerned about being compliant, you're obviously not praying enough about what you say online. I'm just, again, ripping off the Band-Aid, being super bold. Maybe that's not your style. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. You don't have to say all the things. But if you're feeling that frustration, that trauma about not being able to say the things, then I suggest you spend some time in prayer, asking God to cover and cover their eyes. And only the people who need to hear it will hear it and see it. I'm just going to say that. Having said that, I just lived in a place where they didn't know what essential oils were. But you sure bet that they knew what marijuana was and smoking weed was. You guys understand what I'm saying? This 6 foot something or other kid, I'm trying to tell him about oils, and he's terrified. I'm like, here, just give me your hand. I got some sacred mountain. Like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, you smell like weed. What are you afraid of exactly? And so I put it in his hand, and they smelled it. And I've never seen anyone in the state of Texas have this kind of experience that this kid had. It was supernatural. I wrote a blog about it. You guys can read that, about a whole nother face melting thing happening. That was weird. But this kid, well, first he says, I feel like I just had a blunt. I'm like, oh my God, okay. I really probably can't write that on my social media posts. Hey, instead of marijuana, try my sacred mountain. Although I don't know, maybe my business would grow. Like, Okay, don't laugh if you see that in the next couple of days. I'm just saying. But I'm telling you that because I think we get so jaded. We get so caught up in, well, everybody has an oil. We're trying, well, Young Living is the best. Well, yeah, no duh. That's like the no duh of the century. They were the pioneers, whatever. We're also like, America's the pioneer of, freedom. And look, everybody else copied. We're not getting all mad at every other country, are we, for having a declaration or a constitution or a democracy? It's just like, simmer down, everyone. And my point is that when you get all caught up in that, you lose sight of the healing power of these oils. You get so busy being concerned about what everyone else is doing. It's like, whoa, yo, come on. What do you need? They're so transformative. Pamela, we're saying the same words. They are so healing, man. Yes, they transform trauma and pain into love. Yes. Sherry, I don't know if she's on here, but I stole this phrase from her. It was so stunning when she said it. These oils are God's word in geranium. These oils are God's word in basil. You hear me? You breathe that in, you take it seriously. You want to know how to heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually? You take these seriously. And you start breathing those in and letting His word transform trauma and pain. Thank you, Pamela, for that phrase. Into His love. That's how you begin. And we don't get worried and concerned about, I don't have the freedom release bundle. I don't have this. It's okay. What have you got? You know, do you really think our God is like, man, if only you had trauma life, could totally heal that, but I guess you better save your $50 and go get it. It's not a thing. It'll just go quicker. It'll get deeper. But I gotta be honest, when I first smelled lavender, I did not like it. Because lavender deals with abandonment. I have a father that chose a military career over having a daughter. I mean, I grew up, hello, trauma, abandonment. I didn't like lavender until I dealt with that trauma, that abandonment issue. Now I love lavender. I hoard it. I keep it for my people because they douse themselves. I'm like, you guys don't appreciate it. Let me share with you a technique of breathing. Everyone grab an oil, and then I'll move on to a couple more tools, and then I promise you will be finished. Take your oil, whatever it is, whatever you grab is meant to be what you're supposed to have, I guarantee. So you take your oil, you rub it together 3 times. I think it was my friend Maribel who taught us that that's you activate it. I want to say it, I'm not sure. I don't want to speculate where she learned it, but in any case, you rub it together. One thing that you don't ever want to do is just, and then do that thing, right? Let's just know, if anyone is prone to being super quick about it and, as if they're going through the Zippy Mart or the drive-through with their oils, these are not McDonald's, these are not drive-through, and yet sometimes we treat it as such. No, these are a 5-course meal, okay? So we're gonna rub it together, and you're gonna cup your hands over your nose and mouth like this. And what you want to do is take a really good deep, here's my abdomen right here, right? Like right from here, okay? You're going to take a good deep inhale. So everybody, and we're going to do it for a count of 4. Oh, I can't do it. I got to count. Ready? Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. And then you're going to exhale. 2, 3, 4. You're going to do it again and close your eyes. Imagine all of those molecules getting into your limbic system, into the amygdala, the very first thing we talked about. And then you exhale for a count of 4. And then you do it again. And then you exhale. When you do this, when you are triggered, you now have oxygenated your brain, not only with fresh air, but you have breathed in God's word. You have breathed in these healing drops of oil. And there, even now, as I'm talking, your brain is clear. Those oils are going in and transforming the parts of your brain that are not working in the way that God designed it. And then they're going into the rest of your cells and they're beginning to heal that. In case you're wondering, essential oils heal the cell, the body at a cellular level, where supplements feed the cell. Okay, so if you're ever wondering, like, what's the difference? Why do I need both? You need to feed your cells and you need to heal them, you need to repair. So you decide, you have your tools, and you learn to breathe properly. You go to your prayer closet. You go to a room that you can just sit and be quiet and listen. A couple of days ago, I saw Young Living posted, it was National Meditation Day or something like that. And they had a graphic that said, something, I'm paraphrasing, it was like, quiet the mind and let the soul speak. And I thought, that was an interesting phrase. Sometimes our soul doesn't tell the truth. If you're going to let your soul speak, be sure that you are breathing properly and you're seeing truth. Be sure that you have meditated enough to understand truth versus not truth. If that makes sense. Better still, which I get it, they don't want to, dabble into that, but better still, quiet your mind and let the Spirit speak. That's the healer. Our soul, there's a scripture that says, it's in where it talks about asking for wisdom, and when you ask, don't doubt, because you'll be like a double-minded man. That word double-minded is actually double-souled. There is the potential to have like a yin and yang, a negative and a positive soul speaking. Thank you, Tiffany. So rather, quiet your mind. Let your spirit do the talking. Or let the Spirit talk to you. I'm telling you, if you know our God, go to the Lord. He is the healer. I want to share this with, I have it on my notes to share, and I'm hesitant because I don't want to say something to be offensive, to cause an offense to someone who is using modern medicine now for healing. So I preface it saying that I'm very tender to that. I understand there's life and death situations. I understand there's the immediacy of that. I understand all of that. My husband was on antidepressants for a really, really long time until he stumbled on oils, honestly. So I say that knowing I understand. But I don't know if you guys know what the word pharma came from, pharmacy. It's pharmakeia, and it means witchcraft. And you can look at it in the New Testament. You can do a word study. It's not some hidden message. It just is what it is. Pharmakeia means witchcraft. And so I'm just saying there's a better way. If your way is working and you like it, then great. But I'm just saying there's a better way. Personally, I'm not down with witchcraft. I grew up in California. I've seen it. It's a little weird. It's a lot weird, and it's something I don't want to have any part of. That's just me. I've never been a medicine person. The tools of healing are not cookie cutter, as I mentioned. What works for me may not work for you. It takes time. Take your time. Walk through a process. Many of you know that I wrote a book called Essentially Free. Sorry. I was at a class called The Same, and it was birthed out of what was a 3-week class. Actually, it was birthed out of my 2-hour class, then 3 week, then 1 month, then we just went ahead and did 6 weeks. Like, come on, everybody, let's hang out. And then we did like a whole year's worth. We took a break. We have a group called the Mending Circle now, a small little group that we just really, it's just so sweet. We just mend, right? Most everybody in there is on a path where we have healed. We've done a deep dive. In the last few months, I have rewritten my course, my Essentially Free course, and it is now a Bible-based emotion healing course. And I'm launching it on June 1st. I say that, so guys, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be straight up honest. You'd want nothing more, but I'm stumbling over it because I didn't, this actually, the idea to launch it literally just came this afternoon. This was not my intention at all. And so I'm like, I don't want you guys to think I'm doing this class, be like, hey, bait and switch. It's not that at all. Because I have a lot of freemium content that you guys can just totally use at your leisure. 21 and 21, there's so much of it that's just free, and it's your guys that you can take it. I have a lot of YouTube videos, so, you know, if you still are at the pace where you want the freemium, go for it. Just knock yourself out in that way. But this is something that the Lord has designed in me, like a 2.0, essentially free, right? We're going to rebuild, we're going to restore, we're going to refresh, and we're going to renew. The biblical healing, the biblical based emotional healing is it's a 3-month, 12-week course. We're not going to do it every day. It's not there's a post every day. It's online. We do a once a week chat like this. It's probably about every other day, 3 to 4 posts. It's all biblically based. And so, yeah, so I can, I'll post a link for it in this event. I'll also post it in 21 and 21 if you want to dive into that. The next steps outside of that would be just keep doing what you're doing in the 21 and 21. My intent for doing that was like, hey, it's 21, 2021, let's do 21 days of this. And it just got real deep real quick. That's just how I roll. So there's that. There's all different kinds of options. And lastly, you guys know where to find me. I mean, I'm an open book. Many of you have sidebarred, asked me questions. I'm so happy to help you. It is truly an honor to be able to dialogue and grapple with your conditions and the things that you guys are going through. I understand. I've been there. I probably should have started off with this. So in case you don't know, my street cred is I'm a mom of 5 children. The oldest, who had a pretty volatile cancer, he has had a lot of emotional trials and traumas over the last, that was 9, so he's about to be 20, so, about 10 years, and it's up and down, some things he'll heal from, and then the enemy of the soul is just like, wham, and another thing, right? Also, I had a little girl born with the organs outside of her body, so, that was that, and she's good now. She's a tough little cookie, and we just spent, we're now missionaries to Boston. That's our calling. And so all of that, whatever that entails, I've been through that. So I've seen it on the ground. I've seen it in real life. I've coached a lot of people. I got alphabet after my name, a life coach, if that's a concern for you. But in any case, I know from where I speak. I'm a street smarts girl, not necessarily a book smarts girl. So that's where I come from, if you and I have not had the pleasure to sit down and chat. So with that, I'm just going to say thanks. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can dive into any questions. I'm here for as long as it takes. Thanks, everyone.